Time is 7 p.m. We're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we will move to the announcements and presentations. Today we have a bike path presentation with Dupree Engineering, Beta Engineering, and Pari Engineering. Mr. DeLuca, if you'd like to come up and introduce our guests.
Thank you, Madam President. I know my way around. Hello, test, test. Not my first rodeo. Give me a little more volume, Dan. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, members of the council. Tonight we have the culmination of a lengthy study that has been conducted by the firm of Dupree Engineering along with subconsultants, Power Engineering and Beta Engineering. As you may recall, the scope of this work was to look at the current status of the bike path at its terminus at the community center and find any and all possible ways to get that extended to the beach or somewhere in the nearby area of the town beach. They were asked to look at a possible route through the woods, either paralleling or on the pedestrian path that connects the community center to South County Museum area. They were asked to look at on-road alternatives, and they were asked to do an analysis of vacant properties that are owned either by the town or the state or the federal government, publicly owned land, that might be able to be strung together to create an alignment. Tonight what we'll have is an analysis, a presentation, I should say, of their findings. And at the end, there will be cost estimates for the alternatives that they have developed. So with no further delay, I'd like to first introduce you to all three of the members and bring up the first speaker. Molly Titus is project engineer from Dupree Engineering. She's the person who's my primary contact. Derek Hugg works for Power Engineering. He did the on-road analysis, the traffic study, and all of that. And Randy Collins from Beta did the analysis of the environmental analysis and the alternatives, several alternatives that he looked at for getting through the forested area of Canaccia Farm. Let me turn it over to Molly Titus. She'll take it from here.
Am I good? Okay. Good evening, members of Narragansett Town Council. My name is Molly Titus from Dupree Engineering. We've come to you today for the conclusion of the feasibility study for segment 4B. Our initial involvement, Dupree Engineering designed segment 4A with its terminus at the recreation center. So we pursued this project to see if we can carry this through to the end. As Mike kind of went through, we have the introduction to our team, the project summary, the areas of interest. I will get right to the facts. So, as Mike mentioned, one of our tasks was to see if there were any properties within the area of interest, which is kind of located on the screen, Canaccia Farm, south to the high school, as a means to get from the end of the recreation center to Narragansett Town Beach. All 17 properties highlighted in purple are either publicly or owned by the town of Narragansett. And we didn't find a route to connect these. You know, there were off-road routes. There's the new path through the rear of the schools. That wasn't really helpful. Its terminus was adjacent to wetlands. So that's where Dupree's work stopped. Additionally, we were part of the team, so we assembled PAR and Beta to help us look at the environmental issues and the traffic issues with continuing the bike path. At this point, I'm going to turn over the rest of the presentation to, at first, Derek from PAR.
Thank you. Again, my name is Derek Hugg with PAR Corporation. And PAR was brought on the team to look at the on-street options for connecting the end of the bike path, the end of the O'Neill bike path of the community center out to at least roughly Narragansett Town Beach. So we first underwent a field observation effort for traffic counts, parking occupancy, traffic speeds, crashes, then did analyses on all of that data and moved forward with developing concept designs and recommendations. Purpose, Mike more or less covered this, but the idea is to, as conveniently and safely as possible, connect up the community center to the beach. So this is generally the study area we looked at. We connected mostly Kingstown Road and Narragansett Avenue, but also we looked at Memorial Square, Beach Street, and also Caswell Street. So we did a speed study on Kingstown Road, Narragansett Avenue, and on Ocean Road. And I know from your distance, the text is not readable from that distance, but generally we found that the speeds in the area, and these speeds were taken last summer, last August. All of our field data was done in August last year. We generally found that traffic speeds were 25 miles an hour or below in most of directions in the spots that we took our speed data. We took traffic counts at 4 different locations that included Narragansett Avenue at Caswell Street, Narragansett Avenue at Kingstown Road, Memorial Square at Ocean Road, and Boston Neck Road and Narragansett Avenue. And again, that data was taken in August on a Friday evening and a Saturday midday. We also looked at on-street parking occupancy. We separated the data into 5 different areas: Narragansett Avenue west of Caswell, Narragansett Avenue between Caswell and Boston Neck Road, Caswell Street, Kingstown Road between Caswell and Beach Street, and that little chunk of Beach Street by the gazebo. And what we found was that the maximum occupancy in that area as a whole was 75%, but individually peak parking rates were higher in some places and lower in some other places. But in general, we found that at peak occupancy, we had about 55 empty parking spaces, on-street parking spaces in the whole area. We also did capacity analyses at all those intersections that we did counts. And again, I understand this text is way too small to actually read, but ultimately we found that the capacities out here were actually pretty good. The most difficult movement, as you might imagine, was the left turn from Narragansett Avenue onto Boston Neck Road. Then we looked at access alternatives. And first we looked at just getting from the end of the bike path out to Kingstown Road. We had 2 different options. There was the Little League field, what we call the Little League field route, which is what we recommend because it's shorter, and unless it's actually physically blocked off, I would imagine that's the way most people would go, whether you directed them to go that way or not. Alternatively, you can go a little bit longer route around near the tennis courts to get out to Kingstown Road and then head east toward the beach. And then once we get to the intersection of Narragansett Avenue and Kingstown Road, we looked at basically 3 different alternatives to get to the shoreline. The first alternative was Narragansett Avenue all the way to Boston Neck Road. The second alternative was Narragansett Avenue, then turning a right on Caswell, and then a left on Kingstown Road to get to the shoreline. And then the third option was to just basically stay on Kingstown Road all the way up to Memorial Square. Again, from this distance, some of these things are pretty hard to read, but what our primary recommendation is to have a two-way bike path on one side of the road so that you only need to take parking from one side of the road, and you can have at least a buffered, if not protected, bike pedestrian facility on the side of the road. So these are the first options, using Narragansett Avenue all the way to the beach. And in this case, we can have a buffered, protected bike lane all the way. There is only one crossing, and that is across Boston Neck Road. There are no other intersections that you need to cross a major street. It is also the shortest route at 3,100 linear feet, but it would require the removal of 87 on-street parking spaces. Route alternative 2, it uses Caswell Street out to Memorial Square instead of taking Narragansett Avenue all the way to the beach. This is about 900 feet longer, about 4,000 feet, and would require the loss of 89 parking spaces. And the last alternative is using Kingstown Road pretty much all the way. There is a typo on this slide. There are not 89 parking spaces or 84 parking spaces removed. That's 34 parking spaces removed, as that whole section of Kingstown Road west of Caswell does not have any on-street parking, and therefore none would need to be removed. However, the biggest problem with this section is that there also is no room for a dedicated on-street bike facility, in which case we'd be using essentially a shared lane, Sharrows, between Narragansett Avenue and Caswell Street. So after crunching all the data, it is PAR's recommendation to use alternative 1 to stay on Narragansett Avenue all the way to the beach for all the reasons I noted a minute ago. Alternative 2, we think is a viable option, but it's longer and it's less likely that pedestrians and bicyclists will use that route as intended for that very reason. And alternative 3, we feel is not particularly viable because you can't get a buffered or a dedicated bike facility for much of the length. We did look at costs for these options, and this is kind of a menu of options from the different sections of roadway. Mostly this is done with signing and striping. There are some signal upgrades or signal modifications that would need to be made for some of these alternatives. Once we start moving lanes around, some of the signal heads need to be moved around, and some rewiring may need to be done. I also included a couple of options that don't necessarily have to be done as part of this work, but you may want to do as part of that work. One is to put delineators or some sort of, I don't know if I want to call it a barrier, but at least a visual barrier in the buffers between the bike facility and the vehicle lanes, to help improve visibility and safety, keep vehicles out of the bicycle facilities. There are a number of different options for how to go about doing that. And then once you start milling lines off the roadway, there is an aesthetic issue there. You grind a line here and you put it 3 feet to the left. So oftentimes when these things are done, there's also a mill and overlay that is done, so that way you get a fresh coat of asphalt on there and you don't have all the ground up lines on the street. So there are estimates for those lengths of roadway as well. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Randy. Thank you.
Derek, could we get a copy of that slide that has the estimated costs with each path? We don't have that.
Oh, all right, sure, I'm sure we can.
That would be great. It's not in the report, that was, I asked for that after.
So the off-road section is what Beta looked at. The study area is basically outlined in the white dashed area, the wetland area where the current path cuts through the woods. Just again for orientation, the end of segment 4A over at the community center with the goal of getting down to Narragansett Beach. And the way that would happen is once you got through the wetland, you'd be going through Canachet Farm to Anhoxie Way to get yourself to the beach. One of the first things that we did was to go on to DEM's site. They have environmental resource maps. And you can see in this map, there's a significant portion of the study area for the off-road section that is within the wetland zone. So one of the first things that we did was go out there and walk the path system. The path ranges from anywhere between 6 and 8 feet wide. There are segments that are a little narrower, 4 to 5 feet wide. You also have some sections where there is wood that's put down in the more wet areas. Those range from 3 to 5 feet wide, even greater actually in some places. And then there is the existing bridge, the wood bridge that goes over an old stone culvert, which is over the Crooked Brook. So that stone culvert is right there. It's something that was probably created a while ago, a long time ago. So we had our wetland scientists go out to evaluate the freshwater wetlands and their locations. We did this both within the path area, areas adjacent to the path, as well as some areas that were upland or areas that were suspected upland areas. And what I mean by that is if you look at the DEM map, you'll see like that area is an upland area, that's an upland area, and that's an upland area according to their mapping. So we also went into those zones to see if we could possibly find a location where we could maybe sort of stitch our way through between some wetland areas and some of the upland areas. So that process was a process where we were taking soil samples and looking at the plant material around it. And what we found was pretty much at every single location, the soils were hydric soils, and they had hydrophytic plant species, which were indicators of wetlands around. So we didn't really find any locations, whether they were on the path, adjacent to the path, or in some of the designated upland areas that seemed to be free of the wetland indicators that if we were to go out and flag, we would be delineating those zones as within the wetland resource area. And so for another purpose, we looked at what's on the town's wetland indications, which is different from the DEM ones. This one is a little more hopeful, but in all of those upland zones, we were able to unfortunately find that there were wetland indicators within those zones. But undeterred from that, we decided we would still talk to the permitting agency and find out what the possibilities would be to permit a path system through the wetland areas. CRMC said that it's possible to go through their walk-over program. This would be a structure that might be permittable if all other options were not viable. And what that structure could look like, and according to CRMC, it could be something like what the graphic on the left looks like, probably taller, because they mentioned concerns about species growing under plant species and other species crossing the path, under the path, that it would be taller. But in addition to being permittable if other options were not viable, they also mentioned floodplain ramifications and making sure that we didn't exceed any filling within those. We did do a quick cost estimate. We recently permitted and had put out to bid a similar structure in Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Based on the numbers that we found there, a walkover structure that's somewhere around 8 to 10 feet wide by something a little less than 3,000 linear feet would end up being a project that would cost approaching $10 million. So a relatively expensive scenario, unfortunately. And that is what we have.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions from the council?
I have a,
Go ahead, Steve.
yeah, I have a question. Guess I'll start with the off-road part. Because I know I'm going to ask a question about the on-road too, but for the off-road, how far could we put the path in where it was an area that wasn't within the wetland? And let's say as far as you could go with that, and then I know it's not really an alternative to riding it on a regular roadway and all that. With a combination of that, could you have a terminus as far as you could go in the wooded area, and then let people walk their bikes over to the parking lot, and maybe they could attach there? They could still get to the beach, they'd be close there, but I guess, it wouldn't be properly with a whole 8 foot wide and all that kind of stuff. I mean, people walk on the path now.
Right.
So, is it a detriment to take your bike and walk on it during that area? Or is that going to be too hard to, make sure people aren't riding it in and get hurt? Because we do have a walking path, just an alternative, as opposed, and maybe you could have a clearing with a terminus, an ending with a bigger area where you could either leave a bike and walk to the beach and tie it up and, lock it up there and then come back? Or is it just strictly, a certain width of a path that has to be elevated and all that? I mean, how much can the town be able to get into those woods with a bike without putting that whole decking in, if it's possible?
Yeah, I think to answer the question about what's possible by not using a walkover structure for the entire length would be then what would you be permitting and what would be the nature of the path that is left after you permitted a structure of some length within that study area. So this time of year, going into the summer, you have some pretty wet areas where the board's over the pass, you got the bridge over, you've got an area that's adjacent to a small body of water where the water is just crossing the path area. I think that if you were going to go the route of doing a portion of the path, you'd have to permit that. And I think there would be some concerns from CRMC on what that means to the rest of the path. So you are not permitting a portion of the path, and so you'd be, and I believe, it would be my opinion, that in their mind, we're encouraging people to come to this location, maybe more so than what is currently coming there, by having a hard structure at some locations. Now, with that said, if you tried to break it down into micro areas, and what I mean by that is to look at some areas that are not necessarily within the town or DEM's wetland maps, that we found that there were wetland indicators, that they were maybe not as significant of a wetland type, or maybe it's in a transition going from an upland area to a more wetland area over time, that there may be a way to slice the pie that way. But I think ultimately CRMC is going to look at the entire thing as a regulated resource, and they're going to probably want you to do either all or nothing, because they would be sensitive to introducing, even though they are currently there, pedestrian traffic within a resource area.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that, was looked at or could be an alternative. I realize, as soon as they start going a certain place with the bike, where does the bike go? They're going to be trampling with the bike too. It's just a shame we can't get a little bit further into the upland area to some sort of terminus. Maybe it's closer to where this museum is, it kind of stops there and then goes, maybe that's part of the other plan.
Yeah,
also.
and to be honest, we were a little surprised at some of the findings. If you were to look at the town's, I must not be pressing hard enough. Wetlands map, we really were hopeful that this zone right in here, but we took a sample right here, and there's a stone wall right over here. We took a sample right over there, and the soils were appearing to be hydric soils, and there certainly were some of the typical wetland indicator plants around the area. So it wasn't all that encouraging.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Kopech.
Just a couple of questions. With regard to the idea of the first option, one of the things that makes me a little bit nervous about Narragansett Avenue is that on the side of the road which I think was the north side, is that right? Yeah, I just, driving through, I noticed that that's where all our fire hydrants are, and I don't know if that has any impact with anything, but I wanted to just question that.
No, it shouldn't. The fire department would still have
access.
Would still have access.
Okay. The other question that I had was, we have that bike path extension that goes down to I think it's the middle school, and it comes out, I can't remember the name of the road, but it comes out, I think it's a little bit west of where your plan is to come out from the Little League field. So one of the concerns that I have about that is how you kind of route traffic, because it's like sort of right in the middle of Kingstown Road, and it's right now all we have is like a little crosswalk, which makes me very nervous as it is, because it's on a rise. We'd have to probably do something to connect those two things if we were going to do it, and we'd have to do it, I think, with some kind of traffic signal. So that's one thing. And I don't know if you looked at that or considered that.
Yeah, we didn't go that far. We didn't go that far west, but that's something that might be able to be handled with some traffic calming sort of devices as opposed to a signal. I'd have to look into it more.
Thank you. The last thing that I was interested in was, I've ridden that entire bike path all the way to, a while ago when I was younger, all the way to the train station. And there are, most of the bike path is off-road, some of it is on-road, and some of it's kind of busy on-road, especially in Wakefield or Peacedale. And the other thought is that, as delightful as Narragansett Avenue is, it's not particularly it's not a great ride. So I was curious, scenic, thank you, good word. I'm nervous. It's not a scenic road, and I was wondering if you considered any of the other possibilities, between where you come out and getting to the beach, going off Strathmore or something like that.
I would have, but we were part of our direction was specifically to not include Strathmore or Oathmar in our review.
Okay.
That those were not options.
I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you.
I just had a question. So when we started 4A, many residents were very concerned about off-road. So down Narragansett Avenue, how many spots did you say we lose?
I think it's 80.
No, it was 25 for that one.
How much?
Narragansett was only 25, I think.
I think New Kingstown Road was 34,
Kingstown Road was 34.
Narragansett 87, in
87.
Caswell 89.
Oh, was it?
Yes, so originally, we wanted that $8 million path in the wetlands, and I think I was with Randy when you were checking out the area and everything is wet. Is there any other alternative that you guys, I know there are 3 here, you're recommending 1. Is there any other possibilities that you might have come upon, or those are just going to be the options? And the second part of that is, we asked that you were going to put them to a price tag, so that would be helpful for the council, I think, just to see, we have $3 million, what we're able to do and stay within we don't want to exceed that price, so, but just curious, I know you're out there a lot and looking around, but creative minds, I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can do to avoid those main drags and lose all that parking for the town.
But the options are Strathmore or Altamar, going through the residential neighborhood and then coming out to Boston Neck Road that way. But we didn't look at that in detail.
Okay.
Council Lawler.
Yeah, I share Susan's concerns about losing that drastic amount of spaces as well when we have a parking issue in Narragansett to begin with. But I do have one more question for you. On the Kingstown Road, you mentioned that it would be a shared lane. Is that something that we see on Tower Hill Road in South Kingstown, where going down a main drag, you have a bike lane carved into it? Is that what you're referring to as a shared lane?
It would be so it's called a sharrow.
Sharrow.
You have the little symbols in there with the bike and a couple of
So that's what that is.
chevron arrows. Yeah.
So you're basically having part of the road, the actual road is being cut off?
No. It's a shared. So basically, it is an explicit allowance for bicycles to be in the travel way.
Right.
In other words, they're part of the travel way, and if they're taking up the whole lane, vehicles are supposed to respect them and stay behind them. So they do not have a dedicated part of the lane, and that is primarily why we don't recommend that.
Okay. And could you explain a little bit, what is the capacity analysis?
So that is just doing an analysis of so for an intersection, for each movement, how many cars can make that movement, what the overall delay is, how long do you sit at the red light on average before you get through, or sit at the stop sign before you get through. And so there is what's called a controlled delay, and that's what that capacity analysis calculates, which is an average per vehicle. And then based on what that time is, they assign what's called a level of service, which is from A to F, with A being, very little delay, F being more or less over capacity and pretty extensive delays. The worst movement we found was what's called level of service D, which is generally considered to be acceptable. And that was that left turn out of Narragansett Avenue onto Boston Neck Road.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, I have one more.
You can go first.
Okay, Councilor Brandy.
Thank you, Mr. Jasinski. So, assuming that, if the bike path goes down one of the main streets there, Narragansett Avenue, that means one whole lane is basically going to be taken up, or a good part of it, by the bike path. It's got to be a certain amount wide. I know it's not the best way for dedicated, but was a sidewalk ever considered? I mean, I know it's for pedestrians, but to get to that point, I mean, how much of a
We
difference
don't.
is that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think we have the right of way to do that. So there's
Okay.
a certain width that you have to
Right.
maintain for it to be considered a shared use facility, which is 10 feet. So I don't believe we have the right of way to be able to do that unless you start bringing curbs in which case you're going to lose all the parking just the same and spend a lot more money doing it.
And there's also something about, I know I've read it, and I know people that bicycle this route, like a statewide system that hooks up to one another. Are they all the main bike path, the real wide ones like we're talking about here, or some of them have that little narrow lane that the bike runs on the edge of the road? I know Ocean Road was mentioned to continue it. I guess it's on the list as one of the areas of that. Because, most of the time when you see them, they're like one short lane, and it isn't, the safest thing, but I mean.
So it's hard to see on this, but what we're looking at on these is having What this little hatched area here is called is a buffer. You've got your 2 travel lanes, you got parking on one side of the street, but where you have existing parking on the north side of Narragansett Avenue, whether it's this little section here, or it's this section here, or this section here, you instead have a 2-way bike lane. So that they're 5 feet in each direction. So it's a 10 feet total with a varying width buffer in between the vehicular lanes and the bike lanes. And so that is essentially what we're trying to squeeze in to each of these sections of roadway.
Are there any other examples in the state that you could, where these actually exist and are operating, different areas?
Yes, and I can't think the name of
Take a look.
the name of the road now where there are. I mean, I can look it up and send it. I mean, there are plenty of places where there are bike lanes, but this is
Right.
a little bit unique in that we put the 2-way bike lane as opposed to having one direction on one side of the road and one direction on the other side of the road. And the reason I didn't really want to do that was because we didn't have a lot of room for buffers. And if you put one of these bike lanes right next to a parking lane, you have this dooring problem where people park in the side, park on the on-street parking, they open up their door just as a bicyclist is coming by. So I try to avoid that issue if I can.
Okay, thank you.
So I have one question left. I was curious if there was any idea of what kind of bike traffic actually we might be expecting based on the traffic that comes into Narragansett on the bike path today.
We didn't do
bike study.
projections, and those are extremely difficult to do. It's it's so much all about perception, the perception of safety. So you'll get a different amount of traffic if you were to put those delineators in that buffer. If you put those delineators in there, you'll probably get more users than if you didn't put those delineators in there. If you don't put buffers in there, you'll get even fewer users because there's just that perception of safety and how old will you allow your child to be on that path, and the more it feels safe, the more people will use it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Later on the agenda, we are going to be scheduling a work session to discuss these 3 options with the council. So thank you for your time. So moving along to the next agenda item, the town manager's update. Mr. Tierney.
Good evening, members of the council, people here this evening, those at home watching. The affordable housing bond that the council approved to be put on the referendum, Rep. Tanzi and Rep. McEntee have introduced House Bill 8263, and the companion Senate bill is to be introduced by Senator Alana DiMario during this week. So that should be done by the end of the week. Standard & Poor has rated the town with a new bond rating, still good, at AA+. This is excellent, and I think it's because Christine Wilson does an excellent job, number one, as our finance director, and our entire purchasing department and the staff follows the procedures. And when we're audited, it's based on our finances and procedures, just like when we do the regular audits through Bacon, that we are strong because of the people that work on it. Last week, wastewater crews worked diligently during and after the storm that dumped all the rain on us last week. We had a fire in an overworked pumping station down in Stanton. The staff stayed on through the night so they could be in place to prevent any overflow if there's an emergency. They did this until the levels subsided subsequent, and to say it was a close call would be an understatement. They did an excellent job. Those of us who drive around town may have noticed that Ocean Road by Eastwood Look, we've all experienced the poor workmanship done by the contractor for Veolia that patched Ocean Road after the water line main replacement. We contacted Veolia, DPW, Steve Dano, our director, did, They cut a work order last week to get the substandard work corrected. It should have been done last week, but I believe it was the weather that stopped them from doing it. This is a state road under RIDOT, not the town, but Steve had, and Darren had contacted RIDOT and Veolia to get the ball rolling, to get that patched until it can settle before it can go for a full paving with the state. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to open forum public comment. Again, the comments of citizens addressing the council are neither adopted nor endorsed by the body, but heard as requested. Note that public comment will not be taken on matters involving open litigation. The rules are there's a sign-in sheet in the back of the chambers to speak. Please state your name and address when you come up to the podium. Speak only on topics not on the meeting agenda. And there is a 3-minute time limit per speaker subject matter. And please be orderly and respectful. Mr. Tierney.
There are three people who have signed up. Dawn Oliveri.
Ms. Oliveri? Yes. I don't know that.
Catherine Celebrato.
Ms. Celebrato?
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. The town council approved a $20 million bond a year or so ago to redo roads and other issues in town. One of the things that was supposed to be addressed was storm drains. After the last rain, I don't think anybody doesn't think we need more storm drains in this town. There was also a problem with a lot of the drains. I know on Earls Court, down the bottom, they were bubbling up. We really need to address this issue. People's cellars are flooded, their yards are flooded. The other thing is this, I remember a few years ago, the town engineer and Patrick Murray wanted to pretty much go into people's houses and determine if they were putting their sump pumps into the sewer system. The problem with that, the way they used to do it was they would send you a letter and tell you, make an appointment, we want to come into your house and see if you're putting your sump pump into the sewer drain. Of course, everybody disconnected their sump pump. There's another system that can be used. They can shoot, I think, dye in or smoke. I think this is becoming more of an issue, that people are putting their sump pumps into the sewer system, and that overloads the sewer system when they do that. So I think that has to be addressed. The other thing is, and Jesse did this finally after a number of years of me asking about it, the tax collector has a direct debit form that you can use to have your taxes taken from your checking or savings. The only problem with the form is there's a flaw in it because it asks you to fill in the amount that you want taken out. Now that means every few years you'd have to change it because every few years your tax amount is changed. And we all have to do this direct debit, you do it for your cable and your phone and all of that. And we don't have to fill in an amount. The amount that's due just comes out. And that form needs to be tweaked. I, who wanted the form, don't use it because you have to fill in an amount. And it's just not clear enough, it's not easy to use. I think if it was easier to use, you wouldn't be having to forgive the interest on the tax payments that people forget to pay. That's what happens, they forget to pay. And then they have an interest payment. I think you could eliminate that if the form was clearer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Marasco.
Mr. Marasco?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to come up and talk a little bit about an experience we had recently. Last Thursday, my sister needed some medical assistance on Clock Road. And to say that the service was great is not doing it justice. From the very call to the dispatch, the woman was extremely supportive and helpful. And the crew that came out from the South End Fire Station couldn't be more professional or kind. And just wanted to publicly recognize the awesome service that was provided by Narragansett Fire and Rescue and the personnel from the South Station. It was very heartwarming and made me feel very proud to be part of this community. So I just say thank you to them. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have the best. Next. Okay. Anyone that has not signed up that wishes to speak during public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Motion to accept consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, from new business, from the fire department, we have a motion to approve the purchase of 2 LifePak 1000 defibrillators and 2 StairPro stair chair stretchers for the fire department from Stryker Medical, and the total amount of $14,898.84.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, from the Parks and Recreation Department, we have a motion to approve the 2024 contract agreement for the 47th annual concert on the beach with the Rhode Island Philharmonic Orchestra in the amount of $29,054, and authorize the town manager to sign the contract after review by the town solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council?
Just the sponsor, which is a bank, I can't remember which bank, Bank of Newport. They agreed to sponsor at the rate of $20,000, is that right? Did I get that right?
10,000.
No, I thought, oh, 10,000? 10,000.
It's 10,000. The
Oh, right.
legal's still reviewing it, but
I was hoping
we're
for
fully
20.
sure that they're going to go along with it.
I don't know where I got 20 from.
No,
Wishful thinking.
we discussed that initially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other council members?
And, Mr. Tierney, the rest of the money, it's not taxpayer dollar. Can you speak to that? How do we fund the rest?
Some of it comes from the trust fund and the beach enterprise account.
Enterprise fund, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Ms. Siliberto?
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. Poor Michelle, she does her best trying to squeeze money out of people, but it doesn't seem that these businesses want to cooperate. I mean, Citizens has dropped out, and now it's Bank of Newport is going to kick in $10,000, maybe if their legal department approves it. I think this concert benefits a small portion of people in town. It's really visitors we draw in to go to this concert. The other thing is this, when people say this is not taxpayer money, the money that's in the enterprise fund, that is not true. Let me tell you what happens here. As soon as you become a beachgoer, you jump from your category as a taxpayer to just a plain old beachgoer, just like everybody else. This I find absurd, and I've been told this, that you are not a taxpayer, you are just a beachgoer, somebody who chooses to go to the beach. The fact of the matter is that half of the money in the enterprise fund comes from taxpayers who morph into this people who just are beachgoers. We pay an entrance fee, a parking fee, that there's money collected from the use of the facilities, including the clubhouse there. And if you add it all up, it comes to about half of what goes into the enterprise fund every year. And we are the people paying these fees. So I just object to saying that the money is not taxpayer money, because some of it actually is. And anyway, the thing is this, maybe you can start charging or something. We're taking the whole responsibility for this cost. And I just don't really think it's right. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
I just have one clarification. Mr. Tierney, a very large amount of the money that is spent on all of the concerts that we have on the beach is being donated by a very generous person from our community. Is that correct?
There are more than one donors, but yes, that is.
So when we say this is not taxpayer money, a good amount of this money, the majority of it, is being earmarked for activity, for summer entertainment by some very generous people in this community.
Yes.
Thank you.
Plus, we also charge for parking for that event, right? We
Yes,
charge for,
special events, correct.
Yes. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Council Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is a motion to approve the 2024 contract agreement for production support services with Bill Brackett Theatrical Productions, LLC, for the 47th annual concert on the beach in the amount of $13,895, and authorize the town manager to sign the contract after review by the town solicitor.
So moved.
second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, we have a motion to approve the 2024 Summer Concert Series with performances by 7 bands that exceed the $2,500 threshold. Combined cost of $28,050.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the rental as needed of additional portable toilets and extra cleanings per week from Hallman Septic Service and Portable Toilets, LLC, based upon the State of Rhode Island Master Price Agreement for portable toilets through the expiration of the contract.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, from the Community Development Department, we have a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading an ordinance and amendment of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, to amend tables and text in sections 6 and 12, regulating two-family and multifamily dwellings.
So moved.
Second? Can I-
Any council discussion?
I just have a question, and I'll ask Jim, and maybe you could check with Mike. Can existing duplexes be grandfathered in, or is that at this point? I mean,
In the zones that are
Familiar with
changing.
that? I would assume they were, but I'd like to hear it myself.
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking if existing duplexes are grandfathered to be legal. They would be considered, depending upon the criteria, they would be considered legal non-conforming, but legal. It's not like people have to remove
Right.
dwelling units, as long as they're legal. If the second unit was installed without a permit or was in some form of violation and the building official was made aware of that and issued a violation notice, then all bets would be off.
okay, but if they wanted to do something additional to their duplex, could they, or they would have to get a special?
Renovations without increasing the size or the number of bedrooms would likely be approved. I don't want to speak for the building official, but I believe that as long as you're not increasing the level of nonconformity and all you're doing is repairing, then that should not be a problem. Building an addition, that could be problematic.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Okay.
No, just a brief comment. I just wanted to echo Mr. DeLuca's comments from the last meeting. This is no way affordable housing. It's built for developers. And I'm hoping that tomorrow night, when the House takes a vote on the 5, meeting the definition of a
It's not the
household to
agenda.
5, I'm hoping that
It's
they
off
vote
topic.
no.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed?
Nay.
Motion by Council Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 4-1. I just, as a reminder in this community development section, I just want to say that thank you to Mr. DeLuca for all his time. We are having a retirement party. He is retiring. This is actually officially his last meeting with us. So it will be at the North Beach Clubhouse, and it will be from 5 to 8 p.m.
May 29th.
May 29th. Wednesday, May 29th. That's what I meant. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, moving on from the engineering department, we have a motion to approve the recommendations of the Sewer Policy Committee and grant a waiver relative to Sewer Policy Section 3C to Plat NS Lot 399, 147 Treasure Road.
So moved.
Okay, so this,
Second.
thank you. This is coming from the Sewer Policy Committee. I'm going to have Councilor Ferrandi speak on this. He has some
Yes,
concerns.
at the last Sewer Policy Committee, there was some additional information in the packet, and it had to do with number of bedrooms and stated bedrooms and original documents from the original leach field system that was put in. And I just wanted to continue this to see if we could get that part of the record into the whole sewer policy area. There were some questions about it.
We have a motion to continue. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what we're doing here. We're going to continue, we're just going to continue the
There's some
motion.
information to
Okay.
include.
Okay.
So,
It sounds like Steve was looking for additional
Got
information
it.
about the project.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that was motion by Councilor Ferrandi, seconded by Councilor Lawler. Motion passes 5-0 to continue the item. Next up, we have a motion to approve the filling of one vacancy within the wastewater division due to a resignation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up from the Finance Department, we have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the capital improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council?
The only question I have is, would it be smarter to do this one after we go through the budget? After we do, the J1 motion? Because, I mean, depending on if we're going to have some conversation about, the issues with the budget, capital might come up.
Okay, we can
So can we just,
hold off on this
Hold on
one for
that
now.
thank you.
Okay, next, we'll go back to that one. I'll just start that one. So next, we have a motion to award the bid for professional auditing services and agreed upon procedures to Bacon and Company CPAs, LLC, in the amount of $69,500 for FY 23-24, $70,000 for FY 24-25, and $70,500 for FY 25-26, and to authorize the town manager to sign the contract.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to award the bid for tax sale title search to the lowest bidder, Taft and McSally LLP, at their quoted bid prices, $90 per title exam, $100 per collector's deed, and $9 per postage notice for the 2024 tax sale.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council?
These fees are paid by are not paid by the town, right? Is that right? Are these billed to the, whoever's looking for the searches?
These are paid for by the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay, I wanted to be sure.
Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the contract with iParametrics LLC for grant administration and writing services at their quoted hourly rates for the various positions: project executive, project manager, senior grant writer, and grant researcher for a 2-year period.
Enthusiastically move forward.
Second.
So there's a first and a second, okay. Any discussion from the council?
Is there a first on that?
Yes,
Yeah,
that was, I
essentially.
enthusiastically moved it forward, yes.
Jill created her own language for us.
Yes, I did.
So we only pay for what they do, and we really have no idea what that's going to come out to, right?
It's going to be time.
Well, time is money, so, yeah.
Mr. Tierney, do you want to comment on that, please?
Exactly, Deb. It's primarily assigned for, our plan is to primarily use them for more intricate type projects, such as, dredging, resiliency, most often at the direction of the council,
Okay.
for the application of the grants. Okay?
Okay. Yep, thanks.
And they have worked with us before during COVID.
Right.
And we were very happy with their performance. And the staff picked them as number one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, from the town manager, we have a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading the appropriation ordinance for the 2024-2025 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
After the second public hearing, the council had not come to a consensus on one item. One change has been made since the second public hearing to today, the first reading. The 2025 tax rate that we presented at the public hearing was from 931 down to 684. Subsequent to that, the tangibles were coming in, tax was coming in, and some adjustments that were made during the revaluations, which has lowered it even further. So at the first reading tonight, it would go from the proposed 684 down to 661. I would like to have Dan, just as an example, put slide number 2 up as an example. Two.
You had it the first time.
Okay, the first one that we presented at the second public hearing indicated what the increase would be for a homestead exemption for a home that was valued at $41,700 up to $598,900, and there was an increase of $245,557, and so on for each one. From the $538 to $906 was up $1,064, and $614 to $960 went up to $765. That's the rate at 684. When the rate came down to 661 with the tangibles and the adjustments to the reval, that was the reduction. You can see it's the same properties. The 245 went down to 121. The 1064 went down to 877. The 567 came down from 765. The item that remained that the council had asked us to research was transferring additional funds from the unassigned fund balance. And at the 1%, adding additional about $585,000 from the fund balance to cover that 1%. So 4%, 1% will be covered by the fund balance. That would lower the rate to 655, 6 cents less. The percentage of the unassigned fund balance that would remain with the original proposal at the 655 proposal would be approximately 16%. If we took another percent from the unassigned fund balance to reduce the rate from 655 to, I'm sorry, from 661 to 655. It would reduce the unassigned fund balance from approximately 16 to approximately 15. And as you know, the recommended, and we have to keep it at least at 10%, but 10 to 16 is the recommended amount to maintain in there. And that was the one item that seemed to be unresolved at the last meeting. So with that said, Dan, if you could put up slide 3, the tax levy effect on tax rates. This is a continuance of the other slide with the 661, which you saw at the bottom of the other slide, now presented if the council chooses to take an additional 1% from the unassigned fund balance. It would drop from 661 to 655, and you can see the corresponding drop for each property for the values. 410 to 5, up to 598, went from 121.60 to an increase of 89.26 for fiscal 25, and so on down the line. So at this juncture, it is before the council. If that is, they said there wasn't a consensus last time, but we said we'd put it together for you and show you what the difference was. And with this, like I said, it would bring the percentage of the unassigned fund balance to approximately 15, and if it was at 661, it would bring the unassigned fund balance to approximately 16%, down from 19.9.
And what's the range we're supposed to stay within?
10 to
10 to
16.
16. So that brings us to 15. So we're well into it. I'm okay with that. I have a couple of questions,
Sure, Councilor Kopic.
because, it's me. And you just answered one of them, so there you go. And actually, you answered two of them, so that's really good. One of the questions that I know we keep a contingency fund, which I guess for most people would be called a rainy day fund, in order to make sure that if something came about that we weren't prepared for whatever reason, we would have the money. And I was a little confused that we had a kind of email discussion about this, and I wasn't sure whether we're using 300,000 or 600,000 for this comment for 2025.
For 2025, we've budgeted 600. We will exhaust the 300,000 that's in there now for this fiscal
So
year.
that's
We're going to
what,
go over that.
because of retirements, is that what the issue?
Retirements and some
Okay.
other expenditures that.
All
that's
right,
what
so
that-
effectively you would use that, so you want to still have a contingency?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just didn't understand it, thank you.
And that's still, that 600,000 is in these figures that I just presented. now.
Right,
It's already
right.
in there.
So two other things that I just want to be sure I understand. I can't tell if the funding for the affordable housing bond is actually in our budget for 2025, is it or isn't it?
It is not at this
Okay.
juncture.
Okay.
It'll go before the voters in November.
Right, so,
And then that is one of the options that if it went before the voters in November and it was approved, then the sitting town council would
come back.
choose to use the funds in a
Right.
particular manner, and then it would be up to us to find the money. And that's when, there's one-time events frequently, that is what we draw down in the fund balance.
Okay.
If that would happen. But even that, realistically, even if it passed, realistically, it probably wouldn't be drawn down
That's what I
until
thought, yeah.
late in the fiscal year or beginning of the next fiscal year,
Right.
giving us an opportunity to budget for it.
That's what I thought, and I just wanted to be
These
sure that
plans take a
that
long
wasn't
time.
included. The only other, and this is a small thing, was I also couldn't tell if, one of the outstanding questions that I asked in the last meeting was about level funding the library instead of I think it was $16,000. Are we still doing that, or?
We left it at that because there was no.
I mean, I just went in and did the math on what that money covered, and it was, in fact, I just added up the dollars that were in the budget for health expenses and pensions and was health expenses, pensions, and salaries, and they came to $17,462. So that was what I mentioned in the last meeting, and I think it's it's quite legitimate. There were other deductions that were taken from the actual budget from previous years. So I still would say that should not be removed.
When that went to the council, we left it at level funding when it went to the council. And the thought process during the budget preparation was that we would see them operate one full fiscal year and wait to see what the final numbers were from OLIS on the reimbursement. But it's at the town's discretion this is the opportunity for the council to choose to do it. There wasn't a consensus on that or the use of the fund balance. So
those are the two things that we have to decide tonight. Is that what you're saying?
You can change anything, the council can change anything they want, but those are two items that there was no consensus.
Well, we want to be fiscally responsible. So, all right, so, I guess we take it from there.
Yeah, so you asked a lot of the questions that I wanted to ask, especially about the bond, because it was in the considerations for 24, 25, and I wasn't sure if you were subtracting that. But Jim, is there 10 full-time positions for this coming budget that's in the budget for zoning and for the firefighters and for the registration? Is it 10 full-time employees?
It all depends on the 8 firefighters, the 2 for the building official's office, and it's going to end for community development, a GIS position. It's dependent upon a few things, but yes, those positions are currently budgeted for this fiscal year and needed.
Okay.
That makes me ask.
Counselor, I think Counselor Ferrandi.
Thank you, Eva. If I, looking at the math right, and I'm going to ask the expert about this. Anyway, it's nice, it was 6.84. I'm glad that it came down to the 6.61 due to some recent adjustments in the tax consequences. But to get it to the 6.55, which is the bottom line, the bottom slide there at the bottom, what approximately, if I've got my math right or not, is it approximately take another $580,000 from the unassigned fund balance?
It would be
for this?
approximately 500, it's 584,361.
Okay,
And that would be added to the amount of the unassigned fund balance that we included
right.
in the proposal for the 684, which is now 661. If that is done, that will lower the tax rate to 655, another 6 cents.
6
per
cents,
thousand.
right.
And the fund balance would still be within, the unassigned fund balance percentage would still be within the 10 to 16. With the proposal of 661, it'll be right at approximately 16. And with the transfer of the fund balance, it would be right at approximately 15%.
Okay. All right, yeah, because I'm glad to see it come down, and I'm really, it's a little unknown on what that's a good example there, but, there's been this valuation, there's been spiking in different ranges. I mean, even if you look at the second slide, 580 went to 906,000 for the new valuation, and that's a lot more closer to the next higher one.
It's great if you're selling, but if you're still living here, it's...
So, yeah, I mean, if the valuations, from what I can see, from what people have been telling me and when I looked, they're anywhere from 40 to some of 50 and 60% higher. So, you can figure out your own at the 661, but if someone had a higher spiking in this particular valuation period, then theirs is going to be, percentage higher. So that's the only thing I was worried about. That's why I'm glad to see it came down a little bit to the 661.
And one other thing that's also included in this, in all scenarios, is that bond increase to the $5 million that we're going to increase to issue to cover other items that have to be done, such as maybe the elevator, if we get the congressional earmark for that or anything else, which was approved by bond council and finance. So.
Okay, thanks you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I had one other thing.
Counselor, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, as far as the FTE increases, at least 2 of those are supposed to be covered by short-term rental fees, right?
That is correct, under the
Okay.
rental
And
registration
I
program.
didn't look for this, so I may have missed it, but I didn't notice that there was that the revenues that you had listed included those fees. Did I miss that?
You mean the revenues listed in the budget?
Yep.
They took into account the anticipated revenues
Did, okay.
for the
Okay.
STR registrations.
I missed looking at that. And the very last thing I want to say is that I did ask for and received, thank you so much, for information regarding, what our budgets looked like for the last, I only asked for 5, I got 6 years. But one of the things that I was looking for was what we budgeted for the fund balance and how much of it we used. And in the 5 years, from 2019 to 2023, in all but one case, we returned all of the money that we used that we had for the budget from the fund balance. And in the one that we used some, it was like 20% of what was in there. So I think, and we've had surpluses, I think, for all of those years. So I just, and that's, that's all very good news, but it also means that I don't think it would be, in reference to taking this additional amount of money from the unrestricted fund balance would not be, an inappropriate thing to do.
We were fortunate and unfortunate at the same time how we came to receive all the federal money during the
Right.
American Rescue Plan Act.
Absolutely,
Of course, that will be expired
right.
shortly, and
That's
we're
right.
going
We have
to spend
We
all of
have
it.
to behave now,
We're
right?
going to spend all of it, that is correct.
Yep,
But, yeah, all that was taken into consideration with the recommendations.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No other questions from the council, comments? I'm going to go to the public. Ms. Alberto?
Catherine Celebrero, 48 Earls Court. I object to taking any money out of the unrestricted account to lower the tax rate. 6 cents. What does anybody think 6 cents is going to accomplish? There needs to be tax relief in this town, but you're not targeting the right areas. I suggest that you raise the senior exemption and the veterans exemption, and you'll help more people than lowering the tax rate. 6 cents is going to help. But again, money in the unrestricted account, to me, is money in the bank. You don't take money out of the bank to cover operating expenses or day-to-day expenses. I just don't think it's a good idea. And again, look for other ways to give people relief, because they do need relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none. Okay, so I'm just, I also don't feel we should be taking out of the fund balance. So I definitely feel like we should stay at that 16%. We're in that range. I want to stay at the top of that range. I think there's other things that money could be spent going forward, and I'm sure there's some projects or expenses that we might want to utilize that for. I think going forward, we could look at other ways of relief. So that's kind of my take on that, and I know we need a consensus on that, whether or not we're going to be taking away from the balance to give that extra 6 cents. 1%.
I'm in agreement with Deb to go ahead and to take the $580,000 and give it back to the taxpayers. Lower 1%.
Okay, Mr. Ferendi?
I think I'm happy with the 6.61 the way it is, as is. And we don't have to use that other portion of the fund just in case. I mean, it would be helpful to knock it down a little bit more as a gesture, because like I said, I'm really worried about the spiking of different properties, so it's going to be a little different increase for everyone.
Okay, Councilor Siciliano?
I'll defer to the council because I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so that's 2-2, so there's no consensus. So we need somebody to have consensus. So this is an important issue. I think we're here to take a side in an issue, and this is the budget, so your vote counts on this one. You're just voting for, like, we need a consensus, so it's 2-2. So we need, it's either gonna take, okay. So we're gonna be taking from the fund balance to lower the tax rate by 1%.
Only 1%.
It's $580,000 that we're gonna be taking from our fund balance. And it's, equates to a 6-cent savings reduction from 661 to 655 now. And the library consensus, so, Mr. Tierney, so explain that, so even if, so would they have, so that this is in the library issue, so we level funded it currently, but they have, we were gonna do the operating budget, and they're gonna have the funding, the operating funds, they're going to be able to operate the budget. And we're just going to know where it lands.
It certainly appears so, and when we were preparing the budget, we had said we were going to, internally, we said we were going to level fund for the sole purpose of determining what one full year of operation does, and we still don't have a full accounting on the OLS reimbursement. Is that correct? We still don't have it, and it may be a shortfall. So it's not a lot of money, $16,000. However, I think 1 year to see how it operates, especially since we don't know the number yet.
It makes sense.
Okay, so
I'm still in favor of it.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm still in favor of it.
Okay.
I'm level funding.
So this is just to, like, the
What's this one
first.
now?
So this one is for the library. It's, they level funded it in the current budget. It's a new building, and it's a new operating costs that are going to be associated with it, and just assessing a 1-year operating cost, and then evaluation and getting just all the OLS.
But every other department and the school committee, I mean, the school district, all got, they were able to cover the costs of their medical and, salaries, et cetera.
But the
And they all
difference.
had the increased costs as well.
But the difference is if we increase their budget, we can never take that away. And the last council increased it by 200,000.
Oh, that's true.
So I like Jim's idea to see how it goes. If they need it, let's go ahead and give it to them, but let's just see how it goes.
I imagine the
agree
vote
with
is
that.
3-2, so.
I'm sorry, so who's,
I'll level fund, Deb's says to give.
Level
Okay.
fund.
So that one's not going to pass.
so that one's what?
Not going to pass. Unless you agree with me.
Well, I'm just saying that's a new building, and again, they're not going to be able to not operate. They're going to have the funding. There's a lot of efficiencies with the new building, and I think it's going to offset the costs of
Okay.
operating. So.
Might have to use that.
Fine with that.
So we have consensus?
Yeah, so we'll level fund that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions for the budget? Mr. Tierney, that you needed, or is that?
There were only 2 items that were discussed. There was no consensus. We looked through everything, and
Okay, so we're all set. So those were the only 2 outlined. So, all right, so I think we got everyone that wanted to comment from the public. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'm going to abstain
From the budget?
from the budget.
Okay. Motion by Counselor Law, second by Counselor Kopek. 4-1, so motion passes 4-1. 1 abstention, sorry. That's one of the big things that the council is responsible for, is the budget. So I don't understand the abstention, but okay. So next, we'll go back to the motion to adopt a resolution approving the capital improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this one? Do you want to come back?
I'm fine with it now.
Okay. Any discussion from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. So now we are down to the town clerk. We have a motion to approve a victualling license for Pizza Vita 2 Incorporated, doing business as Pizza Vita 2, 120 Point Judith Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a mobile food establishment license application for FW Farrell Foods LLC, doing business as Frank's and more, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a mobile food establishment license application for Matthew Picard, doing business as the Snack Bar, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a mobile food establishment license application for Chicken Out Nugs LLC, doing business as Chicken Out Nugs, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second. Great name.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve a mobile food establishment license application for Shannon Wagner, doing business as Wild Dogs, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the filling of a Board of Canvasser clerk position within the town clerk's office and any subsequent vacancies that will arise from the filling of this position.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve an application for the Rotary Club of Wakefield, Rhode Island for a special event permit for the Narragansett Art Show that is being held on June 22nd and 23rd, 2024 at Veterans Memorial Park, subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to confirm the appointment of Terry Quinn to the Towers Committee as the Narragansett Historical Society representative to fill an unexpired term that ends on August 1st, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Lastly, we have a motion to schedule a work session on June 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. to discuss options for the final phase of the bike path, as well as the best use of the funds being held by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation for the project.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone wishing to speak on this? Any comments?
Just, can we, somehow we need to get the
Yes, the
definitive amount of money that's available and how we get that, et cetera?
Derek said he'd send it.
I believe he's going to send some
Yeah.
more information to us. If, do you want to set maybe a long date, or, and then if we don't get it soon enough, we can move it up? I mean, if we don't get it soon enough, we can do the long date, and if we get it early, you can schedule an early one?
You mean schedule an extra, like another due later than this, June 3rd, because that might be too soon, or?
Monday.
It's a couple of
I think
weeks.
you'll probably be able to get that.
Okay, so June,
He's got the slide.
Yeah.
We just couldn't see it, so he's going to.
okay, so that was the only information, all right.
Can we
Okay.
get the whole, presentation?
yeah.
Yeah,
Include it, you have the, all over again with the
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
dollar.
yeah.
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you, okay. All in, oh,
6B.
sure.
It's
To
just
schedule, oh, this is for scheduling. Are you talking about for the? You can come up, yeah, sure. Thanks, I know you're very passionate about that.
So tonight, I'm Rosemary Smith. I'm an advocate for the South County Bike Path. And tonight, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Mike DeLuca for working as an advocate for the completion of the bike path. Dave and I have been working with him since 2009. So he's the one member of the staff who has stayed with us all the way through the process. Thank you, Michael. We've been through 9 town managers, Mr. Tierney, but one person. And thanks so much to Susan Cicilline Bonanno for her assistance in getting this addressed, the completion of the bike path. The second thing I wanted to ask is, at this meeting that you're going to have, will the town have the opportunity to see the report from the 3 organizations that prepared today's presentation so that we all have the same information before that discussion begins on January
June 3rd, yeah.
June 3rd, excuse me.
Mr. Chair, can we post that? It's public now, so we could probably post that on the, on our website.
We can put them
Yeah,
all
we'll put it
together
on
and
the
get them out to
website
everyone,
and get
Rosemary.
And
them
so
to-
where would people find that? Because that's one of my journeys, is going through and finding material, so,
I will check. If it's not posted, I'll get it for you.
okay, all right. Well, I want, it's the opportunity for the public to see it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we all have the same information.
Well before the meeting, we'll get it out there.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Rosemary. Okay,
Thank
so
you,
all in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. And then,
Council President?
yes.
Before you go to adjournment, could I just say one
Oh,
item?
sure,
Just very quickly.
sure.
I just wanted to say congratulations to Mike DeLuca for his many years of service to the town. This is his last council meeting, as you said, and he's going to finish out the week, and we've got a few other projects for him that we might continue have him do a little bit. And we're beginning the transition soon this week. And in the summer, we're going to be losing Kathy Craig, too. She'll have her time, too, but she'll be a big loss for the town and the Board of Canvassers. And we'll say more about that in June.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sad too.
Congratulations, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Thanks again. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopech.